this morning, I was thinking about how there are certain metrics that you just can't hide from. So when you're doing any new program, like new transformation effort or new business venture or whatever it is you're doing, there's always going to be one metric that will stand out above all the others that will ultimately mean success or failure. Now, you can have millions of excuses as to why that metric isn't what you want it to be, but you can't avoid it. That metric is so real that no matter what effort you put in, when you look at that metric at the end of the day, it's either success or failure. I'm thinking about in a new business venture, you sometimes run a startup company without making any money for a while. But eventually that metric, the amount of income you generate from operations, will eventually be the metric that ultimately drives success. It seems like so many people forget this. They tend to focus on all these things, but the number one thing to focus on is, can I produce money? If a business can't produce money, then it really doesn't make any business sense. And that's just reality. On a personal level, there are certain metrics you just can't avoid, but they're very hard to identify. For example, in a health program, you might want to consider weight, the amount of mass you have, how much weight, how much you weigh. And that metric doesn't lie, especially in the early stages. If you're significantly overweight and you're trying to go through a health program, then weight can be a pretty good statistic because you can't hide from it. You're either losing weight or you're not losing weight. This is reality, right? All this stuff you were doing, everything you were doing led to this thing, and that is what you weigh. Problem is, as you get leaner, as you reduce body fat, weight becomes less of an issue because your lean body mass has more of an impact. So body fat percentage becomes the leading metric because you can't hide from that. But that one's harder to measure. So, but irregardless, no matter what we do, as set out as a human, there's going to be a metric that really matters the most. And that's the thing that we need to learn how to measure. We need to figure out how to measure that metric because that one makes the biggest impact. Like, for example, in my running, I can measure distance, I can measure cadence, I can measure oxygen what they call VO2 max, I can measure heart rate, I can measure a whole lot of things, right? Ultimately, you got to figure out what that metric is, and sometimes you got to be creative with it. You got to try different things, right? Experiment with what metric actually is, one, you can actually measure, and B, it gives you some data that allows you to understand if you're making a performance gain. And so the more I think about it, the more I realize that every human endeavor needs to have a metric assigned to it so that you can measure it and understand your progress.